So you've just finished your techno track, it's your best work yet, and you're ready to get it mastered. Or at least you think you are. Before you send that file off, there's a few critical things I think you should check to save yourself time and get the best results possible. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through 3 simple but essential checks to make sure that your mix is ready for proper mastering. As an audio engineer, when someone sends me music for mastering, there's 3 things that I check right away. Firstly, I check for mono compatibility and a natural stereo image. Secondly, I check that the pre-master has enough clean headroom for me to play with and add my character and style. And finally, I check that the mix has what I'd consider to be a well-balanced frequency response. So first, let's talk about mono compatibility and stereo imaging. This is a huge one, especially in techno, where wide pads and FX can get lost in the mix when played on a club system or vinyl, for example. So how do you make sure your track's mono compatible? Quickest way to check this is to grab your utility and turn on mono. Ask yourself when you do this, does anything get lost in the mix? Can I still hear all of the sounds in the mix? If the answer is no, then there's probably a sound that isn't mono compatible or is too wide. Grab an instance of Voxengo Span, talked about this before and I'll never stop talking about it. Amazing analyzer plugin which lets you see side and mid information separately. To do that, go next to routing, click on this arrow, turn on mid-side stereo mode, and then on underlay, turn on side. Now when we play our track, it's going to show our middle information in green and our side information in red or yellow. When our side information is shown in yellow, it means the side information is quieter than the middle information. This is usually a good sign for mono compatibility and usually means that when you're playing your track in mono, things are going to be pretty well balanced. When the side information shows in red, this color here, it usually means it's louder than the middle information. I've put an instance of Pro Q3 here with a highly exaggerated stereo boost at around 1000 Hertz to demonstrate what that's going to look like. Here we can see the side information is now drastically higher than the middle information. This indicates to me that things are going to be incompatible in mono. So how do you fix this? I would use Span to identify which sounds in my mix are playing in this area. And then on that individual track or those individual tracks, I would grab an EQ8 in mid-side mode. You can toggle between the modes here and you can toggle between mid and side with this button here. I would then go to side mode, identify where the stereo image is too loud, drop that in volume, and then perhaps even go to the mid mode and give it a boost in the mids as well. This is going to bring out the mono information on your particular track, drop down the stereo information and bring it into center a little bit, meaning it's going to be more mono compatible. Next thing you want to check is whether or not you've got enough clean headroom. Play your mix through and make sure that there's no peaks coming through the master channel over -5 to -6 decibels. We want to make sure that we haven't made any changes to the gain on the master and that the volume output from the mix is resulting in this level of headroom. The reason why this is important is because you want to give your mastering engineer enough room to add gain and color as they see fit. And if this number is too small or if it's 0 or in the positive, your engineer simply doesn't have any room to add any additional color or flavor to your track. So it's one thing to have enough headroom and it's another thing to make sure that it's clean headroom. If you're anything like me and you're mixing into a mastering chain to get a certain feel or vibe as the end result, then send your mastering engineer 2 different versions of your same track. One with the mastering chain on to give them an understanding of the end result you're looking for, and then another with everything switched off so that your engineer has clean, unaffected headroom. Best way to get the biggest impact from your mastering engineer's ears is to give them a completely clean signal before you send it off to them. And any good engineer is going to take your reference master into consideration when mastering your track anyway. And then the final thing you should check for when deciding whether or not your track is ready to be mastered is the frequency balance or the frequency response of your track. Tools like Span or tonal balance control, for example, can give you an idea of whether or not you're heading in the right direction. Here's a few things that I'm looking for when I'm mixing down my track and looking at Span. For techno, generally I want this area of the mix to be the most prominent and the loudest. For me then, the second most important or equally as loud part of the mix should be this area here. So I want there to be sort of a flat or downwards sort of curve when I'm looking at Span. Next thing I'm looking for is, are there any significant dips in the mix? If that's the case, then potentially that indicates to me that the sounds in this area can be a little bit louder, or perhaps there's room to add another sound in that area. This mid-range here is incredibly important for filling out your mix and giving your track a bit of life. Think about your kick and bass and hi-hats and percussion as the skeleton of your track, and then the body of your track is everything in the middle there. A really good mixing lesson that I learned from, I think it was Connor Dalton, a really talented mastering engineer, was the 4 dB rule. If you're looking at a problem area in your mix and you can boost the sound in that area by 4 decibels and it still doesn't feel too loud, it was probably a lot too quiet. And vice versa, if you can cut that sound by 4 dB and it still is quite prominent in the mix, it's probably far too loud. Apply this rule to everything in your mix, but mainly those problem areas, and then do some A/B testing with your original mix and your adjusted mix and see if you prefer those results. Getting this part right and making sure that the track both looks balanced and sounds balanced to your ear is going to ensure that your track translates across all systems that it's played on. So, quick recap. Check for mono compatibility and natural stereo imaging. Does your track sound similar enough in mono as it does in stereo? Does your track have enough clean headroom before you're sending it off to your mastering engineer? And finally, have you checked the balance of the mix? Are you using your Spectrum tools correctly and checking that with your ears? If you follow these rules, your mastering engineer will thank you and you'll save yourself a lot of time and just get better results. If you found this helpful and you're interested in working with me, I offer mastering and mixing services on my website. I'll link that below. I also make free production tools and sample packs that I show on my Gumroad. I'll link that below as well. Thanks so much for watching until the end. If you found this helpful, leave me a like and give me a subscribe. I'll see you next time.